Yeah. Hey, everybody. We are now recording. I just hit record. I clicked record to the cloud. I don't know if that's the same as the regular CNCF recording.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Yeah. So it's October the 12th, 2020, and we are the network policy working group. So everybody be nice to each other. We're CNCF, um, bound by the CNCF policies. And we were just talking about the network namespace kept, which I haven't really done much on at all yet. And whether or not we would justify it with actual community user feedback inside of the KEP or not. And Ricardo mentioned that we would do that in the sort of like the preamble section, which is fine. So yeah, that's all I got on that really. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward to write the KEP. And I think the interesting part will be the debate around whether we actually make a decision on it or not. But yeah, I can get that done this week for sure.
Great. Thank you, Jay. So the next one is Abhishek with the cluster scope and network policy. Abhishek, do you want to say something about that? Do you need something? I've
Yeah,
seen that you opened the issue, but go ahead.
so I did open issue on enhancement repo last week, end of the week, and we've been meeting on Thursday mornings to discuss between me, Zhang Li, and Gobin from Google, and Yang from VMware, Yang Ling. So I can give a quick update on the things that we have so far covered. In the very last meeting that we met, we went through the available CRDs that currently offer cluster scope policies. For example, the Calico global policy, the Cilium cluster-wide network policy, and the Ankria cluster network policy, to contrast and compare of the things that are offered by existing open source solutions. And that is a good way to figure out like how they are tackling this particular problem space. And I think in the coming weeks we are going to figure out how to converge between these policies. Take the pros and cons from each of them, and converge on like how the precedence and the prioritization between these Kubernetes network policies and cluster scope network policies should be handled. Answer those questions, and then maybe move on from there and see how we can evolve or start with at least the first sketch of the API that would be available, that we can converge on, and maybe as part of next week's or meeting, maybe we can hopefully come up with a sort of a timeline for the KEP, because as you all know that this is a large or extra large effort. So the KEP won't be like a straightforward thing. We'll have to properly detail each and everything on this. So it won't be something that will be achieved within a week or a few weeks, but we expect that we should at least come up with a timeline for this KEP.
Nice. Great. So Andrew is not with here, so we can jump to the... Does anybody have any question about the KEPs ongoing? First of all, before I jump to the other subject. Any proposal? Does anybody wants to jump in the cluster scoped network policy with Abhishek? Okay.
Oh yeah, anyone, feel free to ping me, and we can include everyone who wants to shape the cluster scoped APIs. So the scope of that meeting would just be cluster network policy and not the other use cases. Those other use cases we can discuss here and then maybe form a subgroup.
It's a much more focused, right? Yeah.
Which one is the most focused on like the DNS side? Because last week we kind of got to that last 10 minutes and we're talking about DNS, and that just got my attention because it's something I was looking at independently. So are any of these in particular more DNS heavy that we know of at this juncture, or was that just a R&D ongoing? conversation.
Now it's an R&D ongoing. I think that Gobind is doing some researches. You wanna talk?
We're talking about FQDN policies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been scouting the the way, like, I guess Cilium does it, and I know a couple other providers have FQDN support as well. And I think what we're going to try to do is, I spoke to Tim Huckin a little bit as well about this, as to how to approach this. So I think what we can do is we can try to propose something as a sort of a, at the SIG network meeting as a proposal, and say, this is what we're hearing from customers. In fact, I had a conversation with a customer on Friday. They asked about this question as well, and what they don't want to adopt like a service mesh policy just so they can do FQDN based policies. Like they just want to be able to do it in Kubernetes if they can. So I feel like it's a legitimate use case. And I don't know if we have to like start treating it as a fourth KEP. Like you have 3 KEPs right now, like, the cluster scope never policy, the namespace by name, and then the port numbers. So I think we have 3 already in flight. We could try to do a 4th one as well. Of course, I'd love to, get some participation from the community. So whoever wants to sort of, help scope that effort, it's not going to be like final, like immediately, but like if we can collaborate over the next couple of weeks, I'd love to get a proposal out and just do a KEP on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think I get it now. Thanks for the clarification. I'll follow up offline.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Yeah, if you have requirements and some sort of perception on how customers would like to use it, like we can definitely talk offline and figure out a time to sync up.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm interested because of I'm in seeking of the customer goals. I have some ways I think I can like slice and mess with DNS, right? But I don't know what to do with it yet, I guess.
Okay.
But either way, I'll still follow up and hopefully can help share some of the knowledge I've gotten in that research.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. And if others have any feedback on FQDN and whether if anybody's opposed to it strongly because it doesn't make sense in their policy or whatever, I'd love to sort of go through it step by step and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Great. So you and Tim have discussed about proposing this to V1 network policy?
Yes, yeah. This feels like it's just going to be an extension, so maybe this is just going to be a 4th KEP. So what we can do is, maybe I don't know if this week's, maybe we could do it in this week's SIG network. I don't know if there's already an agenda in place, but maybe we could take 5 minutes towards the end and just sort of talk about it. I can put a 1-pager together on what the current state of the art is, and what sort of things our users asking for. And if I can recall correctly, like ever since I started looking at error policy, like FQDN has been a very open, like very asked for feature. So I can start putting that together. It's our doc there, Ricardo.
Yeah, this is the agenda. You can propose directly there if you need.
Oh, in SIG network. Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool, perfect. So I can see if I can propose something for October 15th if there's time, and then if there are other folks who want to join in, what I'll do is I'll start a 1-pager. And I'll just put some suggestions there, and I'll tag it in this meeting's notes so that people can actually latch onto it. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that's good for me.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So
yeah, let's also keep the let's keep our story up to date also in the repo as we transition it to a Kubernetes SIGs repo also, since that's kind of like our system of record for the things that as a group we want to pursue. So I think, Gobind, you did put a PR into there, so I think we have it in one of our user stories, right?
Yes, I did put the FQDN piece in there, yes.
Yeah, so if that changes, just do me a favor and let me know, or just PR to fix it or whatever, so that we have our official story up to date.
That sounds good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So you're willing to like own that story, Gobind, or you want to co-own it with?
I can own it, but like I don't have to be the only owner. If there are other people in the community who want to help and contribute and feel very strongly about this, please absolutely reach out to me over Slack or email, and we can contribute together.
Cool.
Yeah.
Which sounds like you
I don't know
might.
if you guys try to get more than one usually, but if that is desirable, yeah, I'd be happy to help share ownership on that one
Oh,
as
that's
well.
great. Okay, so we
Got
have
it.
people to drive that. That's great.
Perfect. And just for clarity, like I can literally just go in and add something to the SIG network agenda. Like, like I don't have to have permissions or some sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah, you can. You just, if you don't have permissions, you probably need to join the signature mailing list.
I mean, I
Yeah,
have permissions to edit. I just don't know if I can just go ahead and change the agenda.
write it down. Write your name, go bend, and just say, I want to
Okay.
talk about DNS.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Cool. Thanks.
Go ahead. Just don't erase anything else, otherwise they
Yeah.
know that it was you.
Banned from SIG network.
Okay, so let's move to the next item. Jay, do you wanna talk about the policy operator?
Oh yeah, so I always make my sales pitch for this. It's like a 5-minute pitch. I
Yeah.
make it about twice a week. So I still feel like, it would be cool to like find a way to build these, the port range policy, for example. One could very easily envision a CRD, which literally went, and if you did a port range from 9090 to 10,000, you could envision a CRD with an operator behind it, which just went and made 10 Kubernetes network policies, right? So for you. So that would implement one of the functions that we want. Then there's, of course, namespace name. That's, like a similar one. Like, so a similar situation where we could just build a CRD as a group, and the CRD could be sort of orthogonal to V1, but we could build an operator that literally created V1 policies under the hood for you. And the interesting thing about that to me is that when these KEPs go out, we could literally be like, well, we have like a default implementation of this exact API semantic almost. It's just that what it does is it builds these security constructs on top of by manipulating the V1 policy API as it stands, as opposed to forcing Calico and Antria and and Cilium and every other plugin in the world to implement this functionality in order to get it, right? Because it's kind of interesting that like the existing policy API is a set of primitives that you can kind of build more complicated policies on top of if you're willing to do so, right? And so like I've made this pitch before, but like I feel like if we went off and we built an operator, it might be an interesting project. It has nothing to do with the fundamental work we need to do of writing these KEPs to get the API changed. But I think it has some sort of unpredictable, serendipitous, tangential value as a cool project to hack around on the side that kind of fleshes out the overall sort of concreteness of some of the concepts we're exploring. And I think some people might actually use it. So that's that. Because I mean, obviously people don't want to wait a year to have some of this functionality, right? That in a platform neutral way, right? So just a general announcement that I still feel like I'd like to build one of these, but I would not want to build one of these things alone. And the reason is because if you Google for network policy operator, other people have tried to build these things on their own. And like I think OpenShift kind of has one, but I'm not sure. Something to this effect. And there's other ones that you can find. And I feel like the value in building one would be to say, okay, yeah, we're going to build this. I'd like to at least have one partner in building it or two, so that I knew that there's going to be some long-term viability and maintainability of it. That said, I might just hack one together if I can find the time, because I don't think it's a hard project. So there you go. That's pretty much it. Oh, James, let's see. Doesn't the operating approach argue? Yeah, it does, James. I mean, that's the thing, is that like I think that's why it's kind of interesting, right? Is it does kind of demonstrate that you don't necessarily need to change the core API in order to get some of these benefits. But that said, I think once you demonstrate this value with an operator, I think it strengthens in the short term, it kind of weakens the argument that you need to change the API. But I think in the long term, it strengthens it, because once you demonstrate that this thing is useful, and you demonstrate feasibility, and you demonstrate that there's actually a default implementation for it, then you could actually make that operator implement the V1 API exactly, so that that API change could go out. And then really you wouldn't even necessarily need a CNI provider to implement that API, because you would have the existing primitives. You have the network policy API in Kubernetes itself updated to support these extended primitives. And then you could be running an old provider that implements, the old network policy API. And then you don't, and then all you need to do is just run a single controller, and that would be it. So there's a potential long-term synergy there, right? So like, it's just that overall flow of CRD, and then if the CRD really works, it really justifies and helps to support the argument for a full-fledged API change.
Are there any use cases that we have on our list already that are especially good for that approach? You know what I mean? Like, I think that might help the argument some if we find some that are on our list of we would change an API for this, but you know what I mean?
I mean, I wonder if DNS might be one of them, right? Because I don't know. Like, I mean, Core DNS is, I know Core DNS is moving towards being an operator installation. It seems like you could build, if you were to build a DNS semantic into one of these things, you could potentially make something that went and made API calls to change the Core DNS config map under the hood to block certain types of DNS requests and whatnot. So, I mean, I think the DNS one that y'all are working on is possibly one. I think port ranges is kind of far-fetched, because like, if you have a port range from like 90 to 90 to like 200, now you have to make 200, or 110 network policies for that. Like, I don't think anybody wants an operator creating 100 network policy objects for them. And I think I've tried to sell this to Abhishek a couple of times. Like, I feel like the cluster network policy is another place where a policy operator probably has some precedent. I don't know if Dan's on the call, but I think OpenShift kind of does something like this already. I'm not sure though. So I think there's some precedent for an operator at the cluster scope level. Like, every time you create a new namespace, automatically you get a deny policy put on that namespace. You know what I mean? So I'd say the DNS one and I'd say the cluster scope one probably are the most obvious ones.
So one of the things that you probably might not be able to do this with this is that if you do an automatic translation on a cluster scope level is, let's say you don't want your users or developers or namespace users to delete policies created by a cluster admin. And now if your operator is creating network policies, each of those namespaces, how do you define RBAC for certain set of network policies as opposed to certain other set of network policies? So I mean, there are things to think of, but yeah, I mean, it can be a cool side project.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? So, and I always get afraid that the CNI people are going to make fun of me whenever I propose this idea. So, like, because y'all know how complicated it is. So I do realize that there's a lot of like sharp edges here, right? So I, by no means, am trying to be like the poster boy for it. Somebody wants to build it. There's a 50% chance it might totally die in a fire, but I'm still kind of down to do it. But I'm not in a rush either, so,
All right. There is like the specify network policy to a service, probably some user story as well that can be like something that can read the service API and convert like an object from a service name to the service IP, maybe. also don't know if this is something, or the pod to node, non-pod policies.
Oh,
There
like
was
a server.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying like actually build a service-based operator. I think I totally forgot about that, but yeah, right. That's the other use case for it, right? Is if you want service scope policies. Is that what you're talking about? Like it introspects the service, looks at what labels it's
Yeah.
targeting, and then reverse engineers a policy for it.
Yeah.
See, Abhishek, there's another use case right there, man.
I've saved your idea, Jay. You owe me a
I
beer.
think maybe Ricardo just saved it. All my other user stories were dumb except for that one.
Yeah. So about the caps and the R&D, I think that we are done. Does anybody have anything else to propose to the user stories? We got some short meeting today because I was waiting for the summary of the user stories from Andrew, so we can start writing the proposal of the API design. But as I told you, it couldn't be today because it's holidays, and he warned us about that. So does anybody else have anything to propose? Wants to dive into some user stories? And do you want to talk about the node policy that we've get off and probably propose to getting again to the V1 proposal? I don't think so. So I think that we can end today earlier, right, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If there's unless there's anything else, yeah, I'm happy to end early. I don't think there was much else.
Yeah, me too. So for the next week, Abhishek probably is going to bring us a timeline for the cap, and we need to keep discussing for the syntax of the port range. Jay, if you need some help with the namespace selector by name, please let us know about that. I think that's all. And in the next week, we can go through the user stories again and summarize them in a single doc. Thank you, folks. Have a nice week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.